Hello and thank you for joining us on France 24. It's time for us to cast our collective eye on Africa. First up, the headlines. Nigerians are feeling the consequences of the war in the Middle East at the pump, with gas prices soaring. This comes despite the fact the country is the African continent's largest oil producer with a large oil refining plant. The Democratic Republic of Congo's armed forces begins a disarmament push against the FDLR, a militia linked to the Rwandan genocide in 1994. This would be a key step in implementing the US-brokered peace deal between Kinshasa and Kigali. And in South Africa, unemployment rates continue to rise above 30%, pushing many young people into illegal mining. One mine owner may have found a peaceful but not universally approved solution to the issue. More details to follow. Welcome to the program. The impact of the war in the Middle East is increasingly being felt in Africa, notably Nigeria. Despite being the continent's top crude oil producer with a major new refinery now operating at full capacity, Nigerians are still facing sharp price hikes. Market reforms, investor debt and global pressures are offsetting recent gains in refining capacity. Brian Quinn reports.
In Lagos, Nigeria, uneven electricity service means keeping the lights on often requires a portable generator. The ongoing global energy shock means the price of a haircut in this barbershop is now up 50% since a month ago.
Some of them are not ready to comply, but they don't have any choice. By the time we explain to them, they need to comply.
Nigeria is Africa's largest producer of crude oil, but for decades it had to import refined products like gasoline. The country's first refinery, the Dangote facility 100 kilometers east of Lagos, finally came fully online in early 2026. But it hasn't spared the country's consumers a massive price spike. Gasoline prices in Nigeria are up 65% since the start of the war, the steepest jump on the African continent. Executives say they can't source enough crude oil locally to feed the Dangote refinery, relying on imports to make up the difference as the war in Iran drives crude prices ever higher.
So we deal in the Suez, let's say 950 million barrel cargoes. We get 5. We could easily get 13.
But there's more to Nigeria's price disparity with its neighbors. The recent deregulation of the country's fuel market under President Bola Tinubu, including cutting fuel subsidies, was cheered by foreign investors. But financing the country's oil infrastructure has meant that, by some estimates, nearly a third of its oil production goes towards paying debts to international players like Western oil majors and banks. The costs of transport and some food items have already doubled in recent weeks, sparking street protests. Meanwhile, Nigeria has no strategic fuel reserve, and the government has not yet begun setting one up.
The Democratic Republic of Congo's armed forces have begun a disarmament push against the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, the FDLR, a militia linked to the Rwandan genocide in 1994. If successful, this would be a key step towards a US-brokered peace deal between the neighboring countries. The move comes 2 weeks following a meeting between officials from both nations in Washington, where they agreed to revive the agreement signed last June. The move also comes just weeks after the US sanctioned Rwanda's defense forces over their backing of the M23 rebel movement in the east of the country. And to talk about the situation in the DRC even further, I am joined by Francine Muyumba, Congolese opposition politician and activist. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me, France 24.
So although a peace agreement was signed between President Kagame and President Tshisekedi in December, why have so many efforts failed in bringing lasting results?
Well, external strategies, as you know, they must always be accompanied by internal national dialogue to make sure that we tackle internal issues is very important. So external efforts and all these agreements and so on alone will not be able to bring sustainable peace in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So I strongly believe that beyond all these agreements, international agreements, we need to sit as Congolese to have an inclusive national dialogue which brings together the government, the opposition, the civil society, and concerned local communities. And this is the way that we can be able to bring sustainable peace in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So it's a good thing when some of these agreements are being implemented. But what is done for Congolese without Congolese, then it's not done for Congolese. So we believe that a sustainable solution will be a national inclusive dialogue.
And you've recently published a book where you discuss governance within the DRC. And one of the key themes that you talk about is reinventing Congolese diplomacy, moving from being acted upon, as you just mentioned about foreign influences, to acting on the world. What do you mean by that?
Exactly. I led the Foreign Affairs Commission in Parliament for 5 years. So I had time to observe, analyze, and which led to the production of this book. So the book, actually, the main objective is to make Congolese diplomacy an instrument of sovereignty, national prosperity, and international influence. So we have, as you all know today, when it comes to energy transition, Congo holds the world's major share of cobalt, as you know. So we need to make sure that all these resources develop our countries.
And touching up on on what you just said about prosperity for the country, what would be one policy that could transform the DRC's economy for the better?
Exactly. We need to build an allied diplomatic corps, for instance, and also push to develop what we call offensive economic diplomacy, to say it so, and also look at our culture because it has a huge influence, for instance, our music with the Congolese rumba. So we can be able to also create what we call global alliances, especially through the strategic mineral producers, and also, as you know, Congo holds the second largest tropical forest in the world. So Congo is at the center of energy transition as well as climate stability. So, and this is why we want to position the Congo and to be able that everything we do at international affairs has an impact on our people's development. And this is the reason why we are talking about.
One question that comes to mind then is why turn to the U.S. for help in terms of coming up with policies or even just for peace?
That's very true. There are people who are asking questions to know what exactly is Congo choosing between this power and so on. My take to that is that Congo must choose Congo. We need to keep control on our resources, and this is very, very important. We must make sure that in all these agreements, we negotiate local transformation, the transfer of technology, and also to the value in the chain and so on. So at the end of the day, Congo needs to diversify its partnerships and make sure that we remain at the center of our resources and our minerals. Otherwise, we're going to be having a rich country, but rich for others. So we have to make sure that we play the major role in all this. Congo must not become a battlefield for all these powers and so on. Congo must become what we call a sovereign actor in all these things.
And we hear you. And the one question that also comes to mind from what you're saying is, why has that not been done yet? Because this is something that is years that has been evoked. Why has it not been achieved yet?
Exactly. This is the reason why I came up with this book. This is a national strategy which should enable our diplomacy to really contribute to the country's development. We can never be very strong or strong internationally when we are weak internationally. So we have to make sure that we develop first locally to be respected at the international level. So a diplomacy which does not really bring the impact and the development back home, it's no longer diplomacy. So diplomacy starts at home and then it goes abroad. And when it goes abroad, it must bring back home.
And well, now that leads to our next segment, which is about the internal governance of the DRC. President Félix Tshisekedi's team has announced that they are working towards a constitutional reform that would allow him to run for a third term. It's prompted criticism from members of the opposition, including former President Joseph Kabila. What would you like to add to that?
Congo does not need a new constitution. What Congo needs now is peace, stability, and national cohesion. We don't need a new constitution. What we need is a responsible leadership. That's what the country needs currently. So constitutional revision or change is constitutional. I'm not saying it's illegal. But we have, for instance, Article 220, which is very clear in terms of limits and duration of mandate. So it's clear, and no one can stand to go beyond the mandate given by the Constitution. And also, one important thing is that Article 219 is clear. We cannot revise or change the Constitution under the state of war, emergency, or siege. So I don't know what they are talking about. It's even unconstitutional to talk about constitutional review at this moment because the country is in war. The country is having problems. So this should not be the debate. They just want to distract people. We have to focus on peace and stability. What we need now is national dialogue and inclusive dialogue that can help Congo to find solution to its own problems.
Well, if this planned revision is submitted to a national dialogue, that would make it enter the legal framework provided.
As I said, it is not unconstitutional to revise the Constitution, but however, this is not the time we should talk about it. What we need first for Congo is peace and stability. We can never talk about that. We are having already many crises, security crises. We cannot add other crises on the crisis that we currently have. So it's just not being responsible at this moment to come up with this situation after failing 5 years to bring peace and stability in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We want to hold the government accountable. We want to go to the national dialogue. We want to look, they have to tell us what has been happening, what has transpired, and that's what is important. So revising the Constitution shouldn't be an issue now.
Thank you very much, Francine Muyumba, member of the opposition politician. In South Africa, unemployment rates continue to rise above 30%, pushing many young people into illegal mining. Although the illicit trade is synonymous with conflict and violence, one mine owner has found a peaceful, if controversial, solution to the problem. Emily Boyle has more.
Covered in the dust of this South African emerald mine, these illegal miners are trying to make ends meet. Known as zama-zamas, meaning risk-takers in Zulu, they work in dangerous conditions, often using rudimentary tools in abandoned mine shafts.
I choose this activity just because it's lack of employment in South Africa. There's no employment, this and that. You stay a long time looking for a job and you don't get that job. I've got children, I've got family, I'm a breadwinner, so I have to do something for my children to survive.
Zama-zamas always work illegally by breaking into private mines, a practice which sometimes turns violent as the zama-zamas clash with local mine owners. But one mine owner has decided to change his tactic. He has just reached an agreement with the local zama-zamas, allowing them limited access to his property once his workers stop for the day. The deal? As long as the zama-zamas do not bother staff, they won't bother them either.
I think that problem is more an unemployment problem in South Africa, where our people doesn't have work, young people don't have work, they must still live, so what is the next thing? They're going to steal to get money, to survive and so on. So I don't think the Zama really is the big problem. So to try and stop them, that's where you're going to have problems where they're going to sabotage your machines and things like that. And I mean, it's unnecessary to go that far and try and fight them.
This uneasy coexistence offers a fragile but peaceful solution to a tense situation. But as unemployment remains above 30%, the structural drivers of illegal mining remain unresolved.
That's all from us for the moment. Stay tuned to France 24. We'll be right back with more news.